Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Gray and this is my review of Pokemon Mystery Dungeons Rescue Team DX. Pokemon Mystery Dungeons hold a special place in my heart as it was my first DS game. I spent countless hours playing Rescue Team Blue, rescuing Pokemons from dungeons. Getting to live and talk to these Pokemon opened my eyes to dungeon crawlers. I even kept rewatching the special Mystery Dungeons episode that came with my DS. However, I haven't played a Mystery Dungeon game since, so my memories of it is clouded with nostalgia. Upon hearing of a remake on the Switch, I honestly could not resist as I wanted to revisit my childhood and experience this wonderful world again. However, replaying this game made me realize that some games are better off being nostalgic memories. Starting off with the graphics, the game looks stunning. Everything about it just showcases Nintendo's mastery of timeless graphics. The game looks like a painting. Everything from the Pokemons to the towns all look meticulously painted, as if it was an animated drawing. I particularly liked how the shadows in the game have strokes in them, further showcasing how much attention to detail was given to the theme. The Pokemons themselves animate wonderfully and have the classic Pokemon charm. The areas in the games are also well crafted. Every dungeon feels unique in theme, from a simple forest to a rampaging volcano. Each dungeon has its own feel and atmosphere that keeps progression in the game feeling fresh, even after 16 hours of gameplay. It's even better than how I imagined the pixelated graphics back as a kid. I do have some minor nitpicks with the graphics though. Like every Switch game, playing it docked on a huge TV looks a bit blurry, especially on a big screen, and I did notice some frame drops while playing. The art style is also a bit too bright when playing on a screen, as I felt all the light, playful colors really dig into my eyes, having me reduce my TV brightness by a bit. However, in portable mode, the game looks perfect. Sound-wise, the game is also great. The soundtrack is an improvement on the original version, which is an insane feat to pull off, as I loved the original soundtrack. And this is basically an orchestrated version of it. Each dungeon has its own theme that spices up the atmosphere. Everything has this nostalgic feel to it that makes you want to go exploring dungeons. The sound effects are also great, except when certain Pokemon start spamming moves. However, like most randomly generated games, the soundtrack did get repetitive while grinding some dungeons. So after I did each dungeon a couple of times and the earworm started to develop, I switched to listening to my Spotify playlist instead. Which is not a bad thing, it's just the repetitive nature of the game usually drags on for a bit too long in the sound department. It's here in the gameplay department where the game just crumbles for me. First thing I noticed when entering a dungeon was just how stiff the Pokemon felt to move around. It really feels like I'm fighting every aspect of the controller to simply move my Pokemon. The game has this grid-based movement, and I always get disoriented when moving. This was fixed by having the grids be visible in the options menu, but the stiffness was still present. This led me to use the new quality of life change, which is auto mode. It basically moves the Pokemon for you, and you can configure it to either prefer finding the exits or exploring the dungeons for items. This, however, made the game way too boring, as all I had to do was press L on the controller until my squad sees a Pokemon, which disengages auto mode and have me take control for the fights. Another thing I dislike is how easy the game was. Throughout the entire 16-hour main story, I died only once, and that was at the last dungeon, only because I forgot to bring healing supplies with me, and I still managed to get through 25 floors. The combat is dead simple, as you basically spam A and he'll get the job done 95% of the time. Combat revolves around the typical 4 moves, just like the mainline games. It's turn-based too, so each Pokemon takes turn attacking, and the trick here is to exploit the enemy's weakness. Typical Pokemon here, it's just that attacks are now grid-based instead of simple turn-based. You start out with 3 Pokemons from your squad, and as you rescue more Pokemon, some will choose to join you. You can have up to 5 more Pokemon from the dungeon itself join you, which might sound good, but since the dungeons are so small and the corridors are so long, you basically get bottlenecked into fighting with only 1 Pokemon at a time. This is especially annoying when the Pokemon in the back of the line start fighting, and you have to wait till he dies or finishes the fight to continue. Especially since the Pokemons you get from the dungeon are AI controlled, so all you have to do is simply wait for them to finish fighting. So for the uninitiated, the game has you going through random procedurally generated dungeons to help rescue Pokemons and find items. These items can range from healing potions to TMs, and the Pokemon you rescue might be willing to join your squad, further increasing your roster. These rescue missions must be accepted first in the town square before heading into the dungeons. Everything outside of dungeon crawling is well made. The town contains helpful vendors, a bank to store your items and money, a dojo, which is a new addition to the game that helps you level up faster, and finally, a place where you can buy Pokemon camps to store all the Pokemon you've rescued, which also provides a place to upgrade and select them. There's also a multiplayer post office in which you can go help rescue other people who got wiped in their dungeons. If you die in this game, you get the option of having online people rescue you from your dungeon in order to not lose the item you had with you while exploring the dungeon. Overall, the core mechanics of the games are solid, and it's too bad that the movement and combat is so stiff and unbearable. The story of the game is typical Pokemon. I like the main idea of the story. It revolves around the question, what if you wake up one day as a Pokemon? And it expands from there. You first meet your partner, who wants to open a rescue team to help Pokemon in need, and slowly goes into this grand adventure where you're saving the world from calamities, fighting legendary Pokemons and such. The characters are all well written. I like the overall atmosphere of the Pokemon. The way they talk, interact, and go with their daily lives was amazing to witness. The other thing I like here is how wholesome everything is. I get that it's a Pokemon game, so it's meant to be experienced by all ages, but most games I've played recently are dark and gritty, so this is a huge contrast and a breath of fresh air that reminded me that games should have some fun, fairy tale-like stories. Overall, this is a great game for Pokemon fans. The graphics are gorgeous, the soundtrack is nostalgic and cozy, and the story is wholesome and fun. However, the movement system and easiness of the game really tarnished the experience for me. While I like the core mechanics of the game and think it's an improvement on the original, the one thing I really hate in video games is stiff movement, and this alone made me hate the game to the point of boredom. After finishing the game, I have no plans to continue on to the post-game content, simply due to how annoyed and frustrated I get when moving around, and how boring dungeons are, despite having a huge amount of post-game content, which contained evolutions and mega evolutions, and tons of legendary Pokemon to battle. This game gets a solid 7 out of 10 from me, as I was simply bored most of the time, and the 16 hours I spent is more than enough dungeon exploring for me. It's a great game hindered by stiff, frustrating movement and easy, dull combat.